What is going on, guys? It is NFL Tactics here, back with some more news. Join us now as we look at the wildest news stories you need to know, including Eagles send quiet message to Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. Jerry Jones' bad guy strategy explained amid George Pickens' contract drama. Drew Brees opens up on playoff regret that cost him more Super Bowls. 49ers set deadline as Brandon Aiyuk trade situation takes unexpected turn. Now, let's get straight into our first news. Jalen Hurts just won a Super Bowl not long ago. But right now, the message coming out of Philadelphia isn't about what he's done. It's about what he still has to prove. And that shift in tone matters more than anything else surrounding the Eagles today. Because when a franchise that just watched you win at the highest level starts quietly questioning your long-term future, it tells you something deeper is happening behind the scenes. According to reports, the Eagles have used the media to send a message directly to Hurts, and the message has been received. That alone changes how you interpret everything else coming out of the organization. On paper, Hurts has done almost everything you could ask for in a quarterback. He's won nearly 70% of his starts. He's been selected to multiple Pro Bowls. He's led the Eagles to 2 Super Bowl appearances and won one of them, earning MVP honors in the process. That resume usually buys a quarterback long-term security without much debate. But that's not what's happening here. Instead, the conversation has shifted toward accountability, consistency, and whether Hurts is maximizing the talent around him. One detail that stands out is where the criticism is coming from. This isn't just media speculation. According to reporting, the message is coming from all levels of the organization, from ownership down. That kind of alignment is rare, and it usually signals a coordinated stance. There's also a very real financial timeline attached to all of this. Hurts is entering the final stretch of guaranteed money in his contract, which means the Eagles have flexibility sooner than people might expect. Even though the deal runs through 2028 with a no-trade clause, the structure gives Philadelphia options if they feel the trajectory isn't where it needs to be. And that's where the performance conversation comes in. Statistically, Hurts still produced around 3,000 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, and an 11-win season is not a down year for most quarterbacks. But context matters. His QBR dropped from 62.5 to 55.2, and for a team with championship expectations, that kind of decline doesn't go unnoticed, especially when the roster around him is considered one of the more complete units in the league. Then there are the more nuanced concerns. Some reports suggest there have been moments of resistance when it comes to offensive adjustments. There have also been questions about decision-making in critical situations, including a reported instance involving a failed deep passing concept in a playoff loss. Whether those reports are entirely accurate or not, they contribute to the perception that Hurts isn't evolving the way the organization expects. And perception inside a building can be just as important as production. What makes this situation even more interesting is how the Eagles are balancing criticism with public support. Owner Jeffrey Lurie has been very clear about how much he values Hurts. He's praised his leadership, his dedication, and his ability to deliver in big moments. That's not lip service. That's a genuine endorsement. But it also doesn't cancel out the internal expectations. If anything, it reinforces them. Because when a team believes in a quarterback at that level, the standard becomes even higher. This isn't about whether Hurts is good enough to start. It's about whether he's good enough to be the long-term answer without hesitation. And that's a different conversation entirely. There's also a layer here involving head coach Nick Sirianni. When a quarterback's performance and leadership are being evaluated, it inevitably reflects on the coaching staff. Sirianni's leadership has come under scrutiny as well, particularly in how the offense has evolved and how internal dynamics are managed. In situations like this, quarterback and head coach are often evaluated as a package. If one is under pressure, The other usually is too. Philadelphia has been through a similar situation before with Carson Wentz, where a once secure franchise quarterback suddenly became expendable. That history matters. It shows that the Eagles are willing to make difficult decisions if they believe it's necessary for the team's long-term success. And it raises a bigger question. Is this simply a motivational push for Hurts? Or is it the early stage of a more serious evaluation? Because the way this plays out over the next season could define the direction of the entire organization. While that situation is quietly developing in Philadelphia, something very different is unfolding in Dallas, where the spotlight is anything but subtle. Jerry Jones isn't just embracing attention, he's controlling it. And according to Cam Newton, that's exactly the point.
A personality as consistent, dominant, and impactful like Jerry Jacoby Jones.
Newton recently explained that Jones understands how to keep himself and the Cowboys at the center of the conversation, even when it means playing the role of the villain. That approach has become especially relevant during the ongoing contract situation involving George Pickens. Pickens delivered a breakout season after arriving in Dallas, producing at a level that naturally leads to expectations of a long-term extension. Instead, he received the franchise tag, locking him into a significant one-year salary, but leaving long-term security unresolved. That's where things get complicated. From a player's perspective, the franchise tag can feel like a delay tactic. It provides immediate compensation, but doesn't offer the stability most players are looking for after a strong season. From a team's perspective, it's leverage. And Jones has never been shy about using leverage. Newton's point is that Jones understands something fundamental about power dynamics in the NFL. An owner can afford to be the bad guy. A player usually can't, because ultimately, the team controls the contract, the opportunity, and in many cases, the narrative. That dynamic becomes even more intense when you consider that Jones isn't just the owner. He's also the general manager and the primary decision-maker in negotiations. There's no buffer. Every conversation, every decision, and every public comment comes directly from him. That's part of what makes his recent remarks about Pickens' situation so notable. At a league meeting, Jones suggested that players might benefit financially by negotiating directly with him instead of going through agents. That comment didn't sit well with many around the league. It raised questions about the role of agents, the structure of negotiations, and whether such suggestions align with league rules. The NFL Players Association has taken issue with tactics like this in the past, viewing them as a potential violation of the collective bargaining framework. But from Jones' perspective, even if there are fines or pushback, the potential savings and control might outweigh those costs. That's the strategy Newton was pointing to. It's not just about winning a negotiation. It's about shaping the environment in which the negotiation takes place. And that's where Pickens finds himself. On one hand, he has the production to justify a long-term deal. On the other hand, he's negotiating with one of the most experienced and unconventional decision-makers in the league. There's also the added complexity of his representation. His agent has been involved in high-profile negotiations before, including situations that didn't resolve the way the Cowboys might have preferred. That history adds another layer to an already complicated process. For Dallas, the goal is clear. They want to retain a player who significantly elevated their offense. But they want to do it on terms that align with their long-term vision and financial structure. For Pickens, the goal is just as clear. He wants security that reflects his value and his performance. Somewhere between those two positions is where this situation will eventually land. But the path to get there is anything but straightforward. And as long as Jerry Jones is involved, it's likely to remain that way. While contract dynamics and internal messaging dominate those two situations, another conversation is taking a more reflective tone. Drew Brees isn't dealing with a current controversy. He's looking back at what could have been, and in doing so, he's offering a perspective that doesn't get discussed often enough. Brees recently shared that he believes the NFL playoff format played a significant role in limiting the number of championships he was able to win. Over a 20-year career, he felt there were multiple seasons where his team was good enough to win it all. In some cases, he believed they were the best team in the league. But in the NFL, being the best team doesn't guarantee anything, because everything comes down to one game. That's the core of his argument. In other major sports, playoff series allow for adjustments, recovery, and a margin for error. In the NFL, there is no margin. One-off performance, one unfavorable set of circumstances, and an entire season can end. Brees experienced that reality multiple times. Despite leading the Saints to consistent success, division titles, and deep playoff runs, the outcomes didn't always match the level of play. There were seasons defined by narrow losses, unexpected moments, and situations that could have gone either way. And in a different format, maybe they do. His Super Bowl win in the 2009 season stands as proof of what that team was capable of when everything aligned. That run was defined by efficiency, discipline, and timely execution. But it also required everything to come together at the right moment. That's what makes the NFL postseason unique. And, in Brees' view, what makes it unforgiving? It's a perspective that adds context to how we evaluate quarterbacks and teams. Championship counts often shape legacies, but they don't always tell the full story. Sometimes, they reflect timing and format as much as they reflect performance. For Brees, that's part of the legacy he has to live with. A career filled with production, leadership, and consistency, and a sense that it could have included even more. While Brees is reflecting on the past, the San Francisco 49ers are dealing with a situation that could shape their immediate future. Brandon Aiyuk's status with the team is no longer just a question of fit. It's a question of timing, leverage, and strategy. For a while, it seemed like a move might happen quickly, especially with teams showing interest. But the latest reports suggest that the 49ers are in no rush. In fact, they may be willing to let the situation play out deep into the offseason. The key date here is September 1st. That's when Aiyuk's option bonus comes due, and it essentially defines the timeline for any decision. Until then, the 49ers have flexibility. They can explore trade options, evaluate offers, and wait for the market to develop. From their perspective, there's no reason to rush into a decision that doesn't bring value. And that's an important point. This isn't just about moving on from a player. It's about maximizing return. If they release him outright, they absorb a significant financial impact without gaining any assets. If they trade him, even later in the process, they have a chance to recover value. That's why patience becomes a strategic advantage. The situation is also shaped by how the relationship reached this point. Aiyuk's injury in 2024 was a turning point, not just because of the physical setback, but because of what followed. There were efforts by the team to involve him in their rehabilitation program, and those efforts reportedly didn't go as planned. That created friction. Over time, that friction escalated into a more serious issue, ultimately leading to the voiding of guaranteed money in his contract. That decision changed everything. It reduced the team's financial exposure and increased their leverage. And the fact that Aiyuk hasn't filed a grievance adds another layer to the situation. It suggests that, at least for now, the team's position is holding. From a football perspective, the interest in Aiyuk is easy to understand. He's been productive, consistent, and capable of being a key piece in a passing offense. Teams looking to add that kind of player will always be in the conversation. One of those teams, according to reports, could be Washington. There are connections there that make the fit logical. Familiarity with personnel, prior relationships, and potential chemistry with the quarterback all factor into that possibility. But even with that interest, nothing is guaranteed. Any team considering a move has to weigh the contract, the recent injury history, and the overall risk. That's what makes this situation so complex. It's not just about whether Aiyuk can help a team. It's about whether the timing, the cost, and the circumstances align. For the 49ers, the strategy is clear. Be patient, maintain leverage, and wait for the right opportunity. Whether that opportunity comes before the deadline or closer to it remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. This situation isn't going away anytime soon. And like the others we've talked about, it reflects a broader reality in the NFL. Success doesn't eliminate pressure. It often increases it. Quarterbacks with Super Bowl wins still have to prove themselves. Star players coming off breakout seasons still have to fight for long-term security. Legends can look back and see how thin the margin really was. And teams are constantly balancing talent, timing, and long-term strategy. All of these stories are different on the surface, but underneath, they're connected by the same theme. Nothing in the NFL stays settled for long. So the question now becomes less about what's already happened and more about what comes next. Because for Hurts, Pickens, Aiyuk, and even the prospective Brees shared, the next chapter is where everything gets defined. And that's where the real answers will come. So when you look at all these situations together, which one do you think has the biggest impact on the upcoming NFL season, and why?